first series and was down below the top 300.
But also, but in its culinary category, genre, it was one of the top shows.
But the thing is, it generates publicity. It gets us all talking.
That's true.
Doesn't it?
Honestly, it'll be front pages tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing, and people will talk about it. They talk about it on social media. They talk about it in news.
Yeah.
We're talking about it now.
Yeah.
You know, we're dedicating a whole show just to this one series. Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. Sorry. I think you're absolutely right, is that, you know, whether people are going into it with an open mind thinking, here is a cooking show and here's a crafting show and it's done by Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Let me watch it with an open mind and let me watch it to maybe find a recipe that I might like or a skill I might pick up. People are going in it because they either really, really like her or really, really hate her. Definitely. And it's going to get so many streams from people that I hate watching. I mean, I could just never waste my time like that. If I didn't like something or didn't like someone, what I would never do is watch the whole series and then bitch about it online, because that's a massive waste of your life.
Definitely. Going into that, I wouldn't watch it again because I did learn nothing. And I appreciate your view that...
So you weren't doing the QR code for the recipes?
No,
that was new, wasn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's, you know, they say all publicity is good publicity. I actually don't think so in this case. Yes, we are all talking about it, but not for the right reasons. We're not talking about this amazing, paratha that she made with Jay Shetty. We're talking about how terrible and lobotomized she is and how she can't actually, communicate to an audience.
Actually,
and she's trying to sell jam. That's the main thing of this whole thing. So I don't think it's actually great publicity, and I don't think it's a good thing that people are talking about this Netflix series in such a way.
But this is the thing, but we are talking about it differently. You don't like it, so you are talking about it negatively. I did like it. I'm talking about it positively. And actually, that's what we have to recognize, is that there is people out there who are not you, and that's okay, who will love it, and there is people out there who are not me.
There's a small percentage who will like it.
I mean, I don't know how much the percentages is, and maybe I'll go out and do a survey. But you also do have to accept that there is people out there who will like it. Just because you don't doesn't mean that everybody hates it. And the same way for me, just because I like it doesn't mean that everybody else will. And I think we have to come from a place of balance, which when it comes to Meghan, when it comes to Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, that is lost. There doesn't seem to be balance. I think people will either come from being very negative or very positive without a sort of, overview of it.
I guess it depends.
It's not even criticism anymore. It's blind, illogical hatred at this point. The type of hostility that refuses to disguise itself. The type of venom that keeps dripping even when the target has done nothing but live gracefully, work with purpose, and create art and storytelling that inspire millions. Thank God for Afua Scot, who continues to be the voice of reason in this mess, cutting through the haze of toxicity with sharp clarity, reminding everyone that what we are witnessing is not a legitimate conversation about Meghan Sussex, but a bizarre, obsessive fixation designed to tear her down. Afua's voice matters because it is steady, rational, and grounded, unlike the hysteria that spills from the mouths and keyboards of Meghan's critics, who operate not from truth, but from envy and irrational spite. The hostility has crossed into territory so absurd that it should be studied in universities as a psychological case of collective projection. When you look at figures like at Sarah Hewson TV and at Daily Samara 1, you don't see journalists or commentators. You see individuals trapped in a cycle of their own bitterness, clinging to Meghan as the scapegoat that distracts them from their own dissatisfaction. The illogical hate certain white women like them have for Meghan is striking because it is unprovoked, unrelenting, and yet so hollow that it collapses under its own weight whenever you hold it up against Meghan's reality. Meghan is thriving. She is producing, creating, inspiring, collaborating, and yet her detractors choose to live in a state of permanent outrage over her very existence. This is why Afua Scot is crucial in the narrative. She names it for what it is. She sees through the nonsense. She calls out the non-seen, that carefully curated performance of outrage that people like Sarah Hewson and Samara put on, as though endlessly repeating tired tropes about Meghan will somehow diminish her glow. But the opposite happens. Each insult they fling at Meghan ends up exposing them. Each recycled accusation makes their bitterness louder than their point. Afua is the antidote to that noise, and her ability to pierce the delusion has made her indispensable in this conversation. It is telling that Meghan Sussex, with her grace and quiet determination, has never needed to stoop to their level. She doesn't spend her days dragging others on camera or appearing dishevelled while pointing fingers. She simply lives, creates, and builds her own narrative with her Netflix projects like With Love, Meghan. And this is where the contrast becomes undeniable. On one hand, you have Meghan, refined and poised, crafting a legacy through art, storytelling, and activism. On the other, you have the person in the blue sweatshirt, bold enough to speak so much trash, yet unprofessional enough to look like they just rolled out of bed. The juxtaposition is almost comedic. Imagine being so bitter, so pressed about Meghan, that you show up looking like an afterthought, while criticising a woman who has mastered elegance down to the smallest detail. Very professional indeed. But this is the hypocrisy that Afua exposes every single time. It's not just that Meghan's critics look unserious, it's that they are unserious. Their entire performance depends on finding fault in a woman who is guilty of nothing but existing on her own terms. When Meghan cooks, they call it pretentious. When she acts, they call it self-serving. When she loves, they call it calculated. When she launches a brand or drops a Netflix project, they scramble to paint it as desperate, even as it sells, inspires, and trends. This isn't journalism. This isn't critique. This is obsession masquerading as commentary. And Afua is one of the few with the courage to call it what it is. The obsession is particularly fascinating because it reveals more about the haters than it does about Meghan. People like Sarah Hewson and Samara wear their disdain for Meghan like a badge. But what they're really doing is showcasing their insecurity. They are trapped in the shadow of a woman who will always embody something they cannot: authenticity, charisma, and an ability to connect across boundaries. Meghan doesn't need to manufacture relatability. She is relatable. She doesn't need to posture as glamorous. She embodies glamour, and she doesn't need to chase headlines. They chase her. The blue sweatshirt moment deserves its own dissection because it encapsulates everything wrong with Meghan's critics. Here is someone, clearly disorganized and unkempt, spewing bitterness with the confidence of someone who believes they hold authority, yet unable to meet even the basic standard of professionalism. This is what Meghan is up against. Not legitimate intellectual arguments, not sharp critiques of her projects, but people so careless they don't even respect the craft they claim to represent. And yet, these are the individuals who dare to stand in judgment of her. Afua's sharp observation cuts through this absurdity by pointing out the glaring contradiction. How dare people in such a state of disarray have the audacity to criticize a woman whose every detail is intentional, polished, and thoughtful? Meanwhile, Meghan keeps building. With Love, Meghan on Netflix is not just a project, it is a statement. It is proof that despite the storms of criticism, she remains committed to creating work that reflects beauty, community, and meaning. The haters can seethe, but Meghan's work speaks for itself. Each episode, each frame, each glimpse reveals a woman who is unapologetically herself, and the audience feels it. That's why the outrage looks increasingly ridiculous. The more Meghan succeeds, the more desperate her critics sound. The louder they scream, the more obvious it becomes that they are screaming at their own irrelevance. Afua's role in this story cannot be overstated. By naming the hatred for what it is, by refusing to play along with the absurd theatre of manufactured outrage, she brings balance. She reminds everyone watching that Meghan's detractors are not holding her accountable. They are holding themselves hostage to a narrative they can't escape. And every time Afua dismantles their nonsense, she gives Meghan's supporters the language and clarity to push back against the tidal wave of toxicity. Consider this. Meghan never asked to be the fixation of these women's bitterness. She lives her life, shares her joy, and pours her creativity into her projects. Yet every step she takes is shadowed by critics who cannot handle the fact that she exists outside their control. Sarah Hewson and Samara have turned Meghan into their mirror, and in her reflection, they see all the things they will never achieve: originality, dignity, and the ability to captivate without pandering. That is why their hatred is so illogical. It is not about Meghan at all, but about the emptiness they feel within themselves. The professional contrast becomes sharper when you set Meghan against the backdrop of the blue sweatshirt. Meghan, always elegant, always intentional, always composed. The sweatshirt critic, messy, sloppy, desperate for attention. This is the theatre of bitterness. Those who have nothing to show for themselves reaching for relevance by dragging down someone who embodies excellence. But as Afua reminds us, The nonsense collapses once you point out the obvious. The emperor has no clothes, or in this case, the critic has no style, no professionalism, and certainly no credibility. And so the narrative continues. Meghan keeps rising. With love, Meghan keeps resonating. Afua keeps speaking truth. Meanwhile, Sarah Hewson, Samara, and the Sweatshirt Brigade spiral deeper into their bitterness, wasting energy on a woman who does not even acknowledge their existence. Meghan has better things to do, like building a body of work that will outlast the noise, like raising a family with love and dignity, like embodying the type of womanhood that terrifies those who cannot match it. The illogical hatred isn't new, but it has reached a point where it is impossible to take seriously. Every insult reveals desperation. Every attempt to undermine Meghan backfires, highlighting her resilience instead. Afua's clarity makes it undeniable. What we are witnessing is not Meghan being scrutinized, but Meghan being idolized by her haters in reverse, because to dedicate this much time, energy, and venom to one woman is to admit that she occupies space in your mind that you cannot reclaim. That is why Afua deserves so much credit. She has become the compass in a storm of lies, the anchor in a sea of hysteria, the reminder that Meghan is not the problem. The problem is the white women who cannot stand that Meghan exists outside their control, who cannot bear that she does not crumble under their disdain, and who cannot fathom that she continues to succeed in spite of them. Afua calls it out, names it for what it is, and refuses to let the nonsense pass unchecked. At the end of the day, history will not remember the bitterness of Sarah Hewson, Samara, or the blue sweatshirt critic. History will remember Meghan Sussex's grace, her Netflix projects, her activism, her ability to rise above. And history will remember voices like Afua's, who stood firm against the tide of illogical hatred and dared to say, "Enough! This is nonsense, and it deserves to be exposed as such." The noise will fade, the hate will collapse, the sweatshirt will sag back into obscurity, but Meghan's light and Afua's clarity will endure. Credit too at Afua Scot for always shining a light on the hypocrisy. To all my curious family, thank you all for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, and put a comment. Bye-bye, see you then in the comment section.